The ancient crystalline spires of Kithara Prime stretched toward the crimson sky like frozen lightning. Each tower pulsed with a soft blue glow, the heartbeat of a dying world. Deep beneath the surface, the planet's core churned violently, sending tremors through the crystal foundations that had stood for millennia. Captain Jiho Kim pressed his palm against the viewport of his scout ship, watching the magnificent alien city below. His instruments screamed warnings in harsh red light. The readings were impossible to ignore. Massive energy fluctuations, gravitational distortions, and seismic activity that defied all natural patterns. According to his calculations, Kithara Prime had maybe 30 rotations before complete core collapse. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Ensign Doyun from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a tall, elegant figure made entirely of living crystal. The Kithara stood nearly 8 feet tall, her translucent body refracting light into beautiful rainbow patterns. But Jiho could see the stress fractures running through her form, tiny cracks that spoke of exhaustion and desperation. "I am Velnara, speaker for the Kithara Collective," the alien said, her voice resonating like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Our world dies and we have nowhere to go. The great powers of the galaxy have turned their backs on us." Jiho activated the response channel. "This is Captain Kim of the Human Deep Space Survey Corps. We're monitoring your planetary situation. How can we help?" The crystalline being's form brightened slightly. "You would aid us. We have nothing to offer in return. No weapons, no strategic resources, no military alliances." "That's not how humans operate," Jiho replied firmly. "Send us your population data and evacuation requirements. We'll contact Earth Command immediately." Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away in the marble halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Miran Park stood before the most powerful beings in known space. The chamber was vast beyond imagination, with representatives from dozens of species arranged in floating platforms that orbited the central speaking area. Miran's black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her diplomatic uniform crisp despite the gravity of the situation. She had been arguing for hours, presenting holographic displays of the Kithara's plight, showing the seismic data, the population centers, the timeline for disaster. "Honored delegates," Miran said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "The Kithara face complete extinction. 12 million sentient beings will perish unless we act now. They're a peaceful species with incredible biotechnology that could benefit everyone." The Vorthan War Marshal leaned forward on his platform, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the chamber lights. His species had conquered 17 star systems in the past century, their bodies more machine than flesh. "The Kithara contribute nothing to galactic security," he announced, his voice a mechanical rasp. "They refuse to militarize. They offer no defensive partnerships, resource allocation denied." From another platform, the Merchant Confederacy's delegate didn't even look up from her floating data screens. Her forearms typed rapidly, calculating profit margins and trade routes. "Economic analysis complete," she stated in a bored tone. "Kithara space offers minimal commercial value. No rare minerals, no strategic hyperspace lanes. The cost of evacuation exceeds projected returns by 800%. Insufficient strategic value." The ethereal collective's representative remained silent, his energy-based form flickering with apparent disinterest. These beings of pure thought had transcended physical concerns centuries ago and found the plight of primitive, flesh-based species beneath their notice. Miran felt her heart sink as platform after platform lit up with rejection votes. Red holographic X's appeared above each delegation. The hegemony worlds, the Crystal Empire, the Machine Republic, even the usually neutral Trade Federation. "Please," Miran stepped forward, breaking diplomatic protocol. "These aren't numbers on a spreadsheet. They're living beings with families, children, hopes and dreams. The Kithara have spent their entire civilization developing biotechnology that can heal dead worlds, cure diseases that affect dozens of species, create living ships that bond with their pilots. They're pacifists, yes, but that doesn't make them worthless." The Vorthan War Marshal's optical sensors focused on her with mechanical precision. "Sentiment is irrelevant. The galaxy rewards strength. The Kithara chose weakness, natural selection in action. The vote was unanimous, 47 delegations, 0 approvals for aid. As the session ended and the platforms began dispersing, Miran stood alone in the center of the vast chamber. The weight of failure pressed down on her shoulders like a crushing gravity field. 12 million souls, an entire civilization with knowledge that could transform the galaxy, and nobody cared enough to save them. Her communication device chirped softly. A message from Captain Ji-Ho Kim appeared on the small screen. Admiral So-min Choi has authorized Operation Sanctuary. Full humanitarian fleet deploying to Kithara space. We're bringing everyone home. For the first time in days, Ambassador Miran Park smiled. While the galaxy's great powers calculated profit margins and strategic advantages, humanity had already made their choice. Sometimes being ignored by the powerful meant being free to do what was right. The alarm klaxon shrieked through the corridors of the HSS Horizon as engineer Soo-hyun Lee sprinted toward the sensor station. Her boots echoed against the metal deck plates, while red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. The Deep Space Patrol had been routine until 30 minutes ago when their long-range scanners detected something impossible. "Report," shouted Lieutenant Jin-Woo Park as he burst onto the bridge, still fastening his uniform jacket. Soo-hyun's fingers danced across the holographic displays, her face pale with concentration. "Sir, we've got multiple contacts drifting in dead space. They're escape pods, but unlike anything in our databases. The energy signatures are completely alien." Through the main view screen, tiny points of light became visible against the star field. As the horizon moved closer, the objects resolved into crystalline structures about the size of human shuttlecraft. Each pod was perfectly transparent, revealing the occupants inside. Tall, elegant beings made of living crystal, their bodies dim and flickering like dying stars. "My God," whispered Communications Officer Minji Chen. "They're alive, but barely. Life support readings are critical across all pods." Jinwoo didn't hesitate for a second. "Launch rescue shuttles immediately. Full medical team standing by. Move like lives depend on it, because they do." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Petty Officer Kyung-hwan Jung cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, we have no treaties with these aliens, no protocols for first contact. Command hasn't authorized." "Then we make our own policy," Jinwoo cut him off, his voice steel-hard with determination. "Open emergency channels to Earth Command. Priority Alpha transmission." Within minutes, the Horizon's shuttle bay erupted into controlled chaos. Medical teams rushed equipment while pilots performed rapid pre-flight checks. Chief Medical Officer Yoona Kim barked orders as her team loaded experimental atmosphere processors and universal life support systems. "Remember, we don't know their biology," she called out over the noise. "Monitor everything: atmospheric composition, pressure, temperature, even electromagnetic fields. These beings might be more sensitive than anything we've encountered." The first rescue shuttle, piloted by Lieutenant Taewon Park, approached the nearest pod with extreme caution. The crystalline structure seemed to pulse weakly, like a heartbeat growing fainter with each passing moment. "Horizon, this is rescue." "One," Taewon's voice crackled over the comm. "I'm seeing some kind of biomechanical interface. The pod appears to be partially alive. It's trying to keep its occupants stable, but failing fast." Back on Earth, Admiral So-min Choi stood in the Strategic Operations Center, watching the feed from the horizon with intense focus. The room buzzed with activity as dozens of officers coordinated what would become the largest humanitarian operation in human history. "Admiral," reported Captain Hyemin Lee from the communications station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from across the fleet. Every ship commander is requesting permission to join the rescue operation." So-min studied the tactical display showing human vessels scattered across 3 sectors. Military ships, cargo haulers, research vessels, even private freighters were already changing course toward the outer rim. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Current count is 437 vessels, ma'am, and the number keeps growing." The Admiral nodded grimly. This was humanity at its core. When faced with suffering, they didn't debate politics or calculate costs. They simply acted. "Grant all requests. Designate this operation Sanctuary, full authorization for any resources needed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other civilizations watched the human response with a mixture of amusement and contempt. In the crystal spires of the ethereal collective, energy beings discussed the situation with detached interest. The humans waste resources on unknown aliens, one pulsed in thought speech. Illogical, inefficient. The Vorthan War Marshal received the intelligence reports with mechanical indifference. Predictable human sentiment. They will bankrupt themselves. On meaningless gestures, but the humans kept coming. The cargo ship Prosperity, loaded with emergency supplies, burned through 3 weeks of fuel in 2 days to reach Kithara space faster. The research vessel Discovery diverted from a first contact mission with a potentially lucrative trading partner. Even the luxury liner Harmony, carrying wealthy passengers on a pleasure cruise, voted unanimously to join the rescue fleet. Captain Ji-Ho Kim watched from the Horizon's bridge as the first Kithara survivor was successfully transferred. To their medical bay, the crystalline being was unconscious but stable, their translucent body glowing softly under the medical scanners. "Incoming transmission from the fleet," reported Minji. "Admiral Choi wants a full briefing." The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing the Admiral's stern but determined face. "Captain Kim, what's the situation?" "We've rescued 43 survivors so far, Admiral, but these are just the advanced refugees. Long-range sensors show hundreds more pods scattered across this sector, and intelligence suggests millions more are still trapped on their dying homeworld." Admiral Choi's expression hardened. "Then we better get there fast. The Galactic Council has officially denied all aid to these people. They're on their own." Ji-Ho smiled grimly. "No, Admiral, they have us." As the conversation ended, Soo-Hyun looked up from her engineering station. "Sir, I'm getting readings from the Kithara survivor. It's like their biology is some kind of living technology. They can interface directly with their ships and equipment. This could change everything we know about space travel." But Jinwoo wasn't thinking about technological advantages. He was thinking about the fear he'd seen in those alien eyes before they lost consciousness. "How long until the main fleet arrives?" 18 hours at maximum burn," replied the navigator. "Then we hold position and keep rescuing survivors. Every life matters." The rescue continued through the night cycle, human teams working tirelessly to save beings they'd never met from a species they'd never heard of, simply because it was the right thing to do. The ground beneath Kithara Prime shook violently as another massive tremor rippled through the crystal cities. In the temporary command center built from human prefab modules and Kithara biopods, engineer Yunmin Ko wiped sweat from her forehead while staring at impossible readings on her display. "The core destabilization is accelerating," she announced, to the mixed group of humans and crystalline beings gathered around the holographic projection. "We have maybe 20 rotations left, not 30. Veltar, the Kithara biotechnician, stepped forward. Her crystal body flickered with patterns of deep concern, colors shifting from blue to amber like a living mood ring. "Our growth ships can only carry 50,000 each, and we have 12 living vessels remaining. The mathematics are insufficient." Hyunmin studied the alien's biomechanical interface, fascinated despite the desperate situation. The Kithara didn't build their ships, they grew them, living creatures the size of space stations that could repair themselves, adapt to any environment, and bond with their pilots on a cellular level. "What if we combined technologies?" Hyunmin suggested, her engineering mind racing. "Your ships can adapt and grow. Our fabrication systems can mass-produce components rapidly. Together..." Veltar's crystalline features brightened, literally glowing with excitement. "Yes, we could graft human manufacturing systems into the growth ship's biomatrix. They could expand themselves using your technology patterns." The next 18 hours became a blur of impossible innovations. Human engineers worked side by side with Kithara biotechnicians. Their different approaches to problem-solving, creating solutions neither species could have imagined alone. The living ships began sprouting mechanical components, human-designed life support pods, propulsion systems, and communication arrays that grew directly from the alien vessel's organic hulls. Lieutenant Sujin Nam watched in amazement as one of the hybrid ships expanded before her eyes. "It's like watching a flower bloom in fast forward," she breathed into her comm. "The ship is literally growing new passenger compartments," but their progress was interrupted by the arrival of unwanted visitors. The sensor array erupted in warnings as Vorthan patrol ships dropped out of hyperspace, their dark angular hulls bristling with weapons. Commander Ariam Jung stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance, her jaw set in determination as she watched the enemy formation take position between the rescue fleet and the evacuation routes. The Vorthan ships were impressive, each one a kilometer-long wedge of armor and firepower designed for one purpose: conquest. "Incoming transmission from the lead Vorthan vessel," reported Communications Officer Jae-hyun Park. The main screen flickered to life, revealing War Captain Vexthor, his cybernetic implants glowing red against his pale skin. Half his face had been replaced with mechanical components, giving him the appearance of a living weapon. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Vorthan territorial claims. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Ariam kept her voice calm and steady. "War Captain, this is a humanitarian operation. We're evacuating refugees from a dying world. The Kithara are not our concern. Neither are they yours. Leave now." Instead of responding directly, Ariam opened a wideband transmission that would reach every ship in the sector, human, alien, and Vorthan alike. She knew the galaxy was watching, waiting to see how this confrontation would unfold. "This is Commander Jung of the Human Rescue Fleet," she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. "Right now, 12 million innocent beings are facing extinction. Not from war, not from disease, but from a natural disaster they couldn't prevent or control. We're here to save them, not for profit, not for territory, but because it's the right thing to do." She paused, letting her words sink in across the communication networks. "War Captain Vexthor, you have a choice. You can attack unarmed rescue ships and be remembered as the commander who chose genocide over compassion. Or you can stand aside and let history record that when an entire civilization needed help, someone was brave enough to provide it." The tension in space was palpable. Vorthan weapons powered up, their targeting systems locking onto human vessels. But Ariam had gambled on something the Vorthans hadn't considered. They were warriors, not butchers. Their entire culture was built on honor in combat, not the slaughter of civilians. Long minutes passed. Finally, War Captain Vexthor's image reappeared on screen. His mechanical eye whirred as it focused on Ariam. "You have one rotation to complete your operation. After that, this space returns to Vorthan control." The transmission cut, and slowly the Vorthan ships moved aside, creating a narrow corridor through their formation. Meanwhile, Dr. Tae-hyun Park was performing medical miracles across the rescue fleet. The Kithara refugees arrived in various states of distress, some suffering from crystal fractures caused by the planetary tremors, others weakened by radiation exposure from their world's dying core. "Human medicine alone isn't enough," he reported, to the Medical Coordination Center. "But when we combine our nanotechnology with their biorestoration techniques, the results were extraordinary. Human nanobots could repair crystal fractures at the molecular level, while Kithara healing resonances could accelerate human tissue regeneration. The two species' medical knowledge complemented each other perfectly." Nurse Young Mi Shin watched in wonder as a critically injured Kithara child's wounds healed before her eyes. "Doctor, their cellular structure is responding to our treatment faster than anything I've ever seen." "They're teaching us as much as we're helping them," Tae-hyun replied, monitoring the child's recovery. "This partnership could revolutionize medicine for both our species." The evacuation continued around the clock. The hybrid ships, now capable of carrying 500,000 refugees each, made trip after trip between the dying planet and the designated safe zones. Human cargo vessels worked alongside Kithara biotransports, creating a continuous stream of life, flowing away from the impending disaster. With just hours remaining before core collapse, the last transport lifted off from Kithara Prime's surface. Veltar stood beside Hyunmin on the observation deck, watching their homeworld shrink in the distance. 12 million souls saved, the alien biotechnician said, her voice like crystal bells in the wind. The galactic powers said it was impossible. Hyunmin smiled, exhausted but triumphant. That's the thing about humans. We don't really understand the word impossible. We just see problems that haven't been solved yet. Behind them, Kythera Prime's final moments lit up the darkness of space as the planet's core finally collapsed, taking with it the crystalline cities that had stood for millennia. But their people lived on, saved by the impossible partnership between human determination and Kythera innovation. The message spread like wildfire across the galaxy's forgotten corners. In the asteroid mining colonies, where desperate families scraped out a living, in the refugee camps on dead worlds where outcasts had nowhere else to go, and in the hidden settlements where species too small or too strange for the galactic powers had been left to fend for themselves. Captain Herin Moon stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching the tactical display in amazement. What had started as a human rescue operation was transforming into something unprecedented. Dozens of alien vessels were arriving at the rendezvous coordinates, ships she'd never seen before, representing species that most of the galaxy had forgotten existed. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," announced Lieutenant Wu Jin Choi from the communication station. "This one's from, I'm not sure how to pronounce it." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a jellyfish. Its translucent wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, and its voice came through the universal translator as a melodic whisper. "I am Zethara of the Zephyrian Drift Clans," the creature said, its wings pulsing with soft purple light. "We have wandered the void for 3 centuries since our homeworld was consumed by corporate mining. When we heard that someone actually saved an entire species, we had to come see for ourselves." Herin felt a lump form in her throat. "You're welcome to join us, Zethara. We can use all the help we can get. We bring 17 ship clusters and knowledge of the deep currents," the Zephyrian replied. "Pathways through space that the great powers have never mapped." The next arrival was even more surprising. A massive vessel that looked like it had been cobbled together from a dozen different ship designs dropped out of hyperspace. Its hull was a patchwork of metals, crystals, and organic components that shouldn't have been able to work together, but somehow did. "This is Admiral Corvin of the Nomad Fleets," came a gruff voice over the comm. "We've been running from the hegemonies, expansion for 50 years. Figured it was time to stop running and start helping." Within hours, the gathering had grown beyond anything Herin could have imagined. The insectoid hive singers arrived in swarms of small, buzzing ships. The silicon-based rock walkers came in vessels that looked like flying mountains. Even the energy beings known as the Spark Dancers manifested themselves in containment fields aboard jury-rigged spacecraft. Herin called a meeting in the massive cargo bay of the HSS Unity, the largest ship in the human fleet. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a space hastily converted into a conference area. The sight was incredible. Beings of every imaginable shape and size, united by a common experience of being ignored or abandoned by the galaxy's major powers. "Look around you," Herin began, her voice carrying clearly through the bay's acoustic systems. "The universe has written us off, called us insignificant, worthless. But today, we write our own story." A chorus of agreement rang out, in dozens of different languages and communication methods. The hive singers buzzed in harmonic patterns, the rock walkers rumbled deep bass notes that vibrated through the deck plates, and the spark dancers flickered in synchronized light displays. "We saved the Kythera because it was right," Herin continued. "Not because of politics or profit, but because every life has value. And now we're going to prove that the small, the forgotten, and the overlooked can accomplish things the mighty galactic powers never dreamed of." The real breakthrough came when engineer Hyunmin Ko presented her latest discovery to the assembled group. Working with Kythera biotechnician Veltar and a team of alien scientists, she had developed something revolutionary. "We call them environmental Genesis processors," Hyunmin explained, gesturing to the holographic display showing a device that was part machine, part living organism. By combining Kythera bioadaptation technology with human manufacturing techniques and Zephyrian energy manipulation, we can terraform a dead world in months instead of centuries. The demonstration was breathtaking. The hologram showed a barren, airless rock being transformed. The processors, looking like metallic flowers with crystalline petals, took root across the planet's surface. They began producing atmosphere, breaking down toxic compounds and seeding the soil with the building blocks of life. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Sun-Ho Kim, a xenobiologist who had joined the Alliance. "The established powers have been trying to perfect terraforming for millennia." Veltar's crystalline form brightened with pride. "Alone, none of our species could achieve this, but together we combine strengths that complement each other perfectly." The medical breakthroughs were equally impressive. Dr. Taehyun Park worked with healers from a dozen different species to develop universal treatment protocols. The Rockwalkers contributed knowledge of mineral-based healing. The Hive Singers shared their understanding of collective consciousness therapy, and the Energy Beings offered insights into bioelectric field manipulation. "We've created medical techniques that can heal virtually any known species," Taehyun reported to the Alliance leadership. "Carbon-based, silicon-based, energy-based, it doesn't matter. These hybrid technologies adapt to any biological system." But perhaps the most significant development was in space travel itself. The Zephyrian drift pilots, working with human engineers and Kithara biotechnicians, had mapped previously unknown pathways through space, currents of exotic matter that could carry ships faster than traditional hyperspace drives. "The great powers control the major hyperspace routes," explained Zethara during a navigation briefing. "But these deep currents flow beneath their notice. With our biomechanical ships, we can access them safely." Word of these innovations quickly reached the established galactic powers, and their reaction was swift and predictable. The Merchant Confederacy tried to buy exclusive rights to the technologies. The Vorthan Empire demanded military applications. The Ethereal Collective offered to study the discoveries in their pristine laboratories. All were politely but firmly refused. "They ignored us when we needed help," Captain Heron addressed the Galactic Council via subspace transmission. "Now, they want to profit from what we've accomplished together. The Alliance shares our discoveries freely among our members, but the rest of the galaxy will have to earn our trust." The transformation was remarkable. Refugee camps that had existed for decades began using the environmental processes to transform their barren refuges into garden worlds. The nomad fleets finally had a chance to settle down if they chose. The forgotten species found their voices, and their value recognized. In the research labs aboard the Alliance ships, miracles happened daily. A Hive Singer engineer worked alongside a human programmer to develop communication systems that could translate emotions as well as words. Rockwalker. Geologists collaborated with Kithara bioarchitects to design cities that grew from the living rock itself. "We're not just rescuing refugees anymore," observed Lieutenant Minji Park, as she watched a joint human-alien crew testing a new type of shield system. "We're building something new, something better." The galaxy's power structure was shifting, and the established civilizations were beginning to realize that the insignificant species they had ignored for so long were no longer willing to be overlooked. The alliance that had formed around humanity's compassionate response to the Kithara crisis was becoming a force that could challenge the status quo. And at the center of it all, the simple human principle that had started everything. When people need help, you help them no matter what the cost. 6 months after the last Kithara refugee ship touched down in human space, the galaxy looked completely different. On the world of New Haven, crystalline spires grew alongside human skyscrapers, their bioluminescent surfaces casting rainbow patterns across the bustling streets below. Children of both species played together in the crystal gardens, their laughter echoing through structures that seemed to pulse with life itself. Admiral Jiho Kim stood on the observation deck of the Alliance headquarters, watching a young human girl named Yunji teach a group of Kithara younglings how to play soccer. The crystal children moved with fluid grace, their bodies refracting sunlight as they chased the ball across the living grass that the bioengineers had developed. "Sir, Ambassador Park is ready for the transmission," announced Captain Do-hyun, Lee approaching with a datapad in hand. "The Galactic Council session begins in 10 minutes. Jiho nodded, straightening his new uniform. The insignia on his chest bore the symbol of the Forgotten Alliance, a circle of interconnected hands, representing dozens of species united in purpose. "How many are watching?" Conservative estimates put it at 40 billion beings across 700 star systems, Do-hyun replied. Every major news network in the galaxy is carrying the feed live. 3,000 light-years away, in the marble halls of the Galactic Council, the atmosphere was tense. The chamber that had once dismissed the Kithara crisis now buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from the major powers whispered among themselves, their confidence shaken by recent events. Ambassador Miran Park walked into the chamber, but she was no longer alone. Behind her came a delegation that would have been impossible to imagine just months ago. Veltar represented the Kithara, her crystalline form now enhanced with biomechanical systems that allowed her to interface with any technology. Zethara of the Zephyrians floated gracefully, her butterfly-like wings creating mesmerizing light patterns. Admiral Corvin of the Nomad fleets stood proud in armor forged from a dozen different worlds. The chamber fell silent as Miran approached, the central speaking platform. The floating delegate platforms that surrounded her were the same ones that had voted to abandon the Kithara, but now their occupants seemed smaller, less certain of their power. "Honored delegates," Miran began, her voice carrying clearly through the acoustic systems. 6 months ago I stood in this very spot, pleading for help to save 12 million innocent lives. You ignored us. You calculated profit margins and strategic advantages, while an entire civilization faced extinction. The Vorthan War Marshal shifted uncomfortably in his mechanical throne. The Merchant Confederacy's delegates avoided eye contact, their multiple arms fidgeting with data screens. But today, I return not as a supplicant, but as the voice of the Forgotten Alliance, Miran continued. 63 species, controlling, over 400 star systems, united by a simple principle that you have forgotten, that every life has value. The holographic displays around the chamber lit up with images from across Alliance space, new worlds being terraformed in record time, refugee camps transformed into thriving colonies, technologies that the established powers had spent centuries trying to develop, now working perfectly through cooperative innovation. The Kithara aren't just alive, they're thriving, Miran announced. Their biocities are growing on 17 worlds, producing medical technologies that can cure diseases you've spent millennia fighting. Our environmental processes have already restored 12 dead worlds to full habitability. In the ethereal collectives section, energy beings flickered with what might have been concern. They had dismissed physical species as primitive, but the Alliance's achievements were forcing them to reconsider. We control the deep current trade routes now, Miran continued, her voice gaining strength. The pathways the Zephyrians revealed bypass your traditional hyperspace lanes entirely. Cargo that used to take months to transport now moves in weeks, at a fraction of the cost. The economic implications hit the chamber like a thunderbolt. The Merchant Confederacy's main delegate, her forearms working frantically on damage control calculations, finally looked up with obvious alarm. The Alliance offers partnership, not domination, Miran said, her tone softening slightly. But it will be partnership between equals. The days of ignoring the insignificant species are over. Back on New Haven, the celebration was just beginning. In the Crystal Gardens, humans and Kithara worked side by side, tending to plants that glowed with soft bioluminescence. The integration had been so successful that many visitors couldn't tell where human technology ended and Kithara bioengineering began. Dr. Tae-hyun Park walked through the medical center, marveling at how far they'd come. Patients from dozens of species received treatment from doctors who might be human, Kithara, Rockwalker, or any combination thereof. The hybrid medical techniques developed by the Alliance had virtually eliminated disease-based suffering in their territories. "Dr. Park," called Nurse Youngmi as she approached with a datapad. "The quarterly health reports are in. Overall, mortality rates in Alliance space are down 73% from galactic averages. In the shipyards orbiting New Haven, the construction never stopped. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian energy shapers and Kithara bioarchitects to create vessels that were part machine, part living organism. These ships could repair themselves, adapt to any environment, and travel the deep currents faster than anything the established powers possessed. Captain Sujin Nam piloted one of these new hybrid vessels, the HSS Harmony, on its maiden voyage through the Andromeda Deep Current. The ship's living hull adjusted automatically to the exotic energies, while its crystalline navigation systems plotted courses that traditional computers couldn't calculate. "Control, this is Harmony," she reported back to Fleet Command. "Transit. Time to the Outer Rim has been reduced to 4 days. The bioship adaptation is working perfectly. The response from the galactic powers was swift and predictable. Trade embargoes, diplomatic sanctions, and military posturing became common. But the Alliance had learned to be self-sufficient. When the Vorthan Empire blocked traditional shipping lanes, Alliance vessels simply used the deep currents. When the Merchant Confederacy imposed trade restrictions, the Alliance's self-replicating biofactories provided everything they needed. The most dramatic moment came when the hegemony worlds attempted to forcibly annex an Alliance colony world. 3 hegemony battlecruisers dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a lightly defended refugee settlement. Instead, they discovered a fully integrated defense network that combined human military tactics with alien technologies they'd never encountered. Zephyrian energy shields deflected their weapons harmlessly, while biomechanical defense platforms that looked like enormous crystalline flowers disabled their ships with targeted electromagnetic pulses. "This is Admiral Kim of the Alliance Defense Force," came the transmission that would be played on news networks across the galaxy. "Your vessels are disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. Consider this a demonstration of restraint. Withdraw now and we'll help you repair your ships. Stay and face the consequences." The hegemony ships withdrew. In the months that followed, more species requested to join the Alliance. Even some member worlds of the established powers began seeking independence to join the growing coalition. The galaxy's power structure, unchanged for millennia, was transforming before everyone's eyes. Admiral Jiho Kim stood once again on his observation deck, watching the sunset over New Haven. The crystal spires caught the light and reflected it in patterns that seemed almost musical. Human children and their alien friends played in the gardens below, their games a perfect metaphor for the cooperation that had made all of this possible. "Sir," Captain Dohyun approached with a smile, "intelligence reports that 17 more systems have requested Alliance membership this week. The Council is calling for emergency sessions." Jiho smiled, remembering the desperate Kithara refugees they had pulled from failing escape pods not so long ago. "Good. Let them talk. We'll be here when they're ready to listen." The transformation was complete. The galaxy that had once ignored its weakest members now found itself challenged by an alliance that proved compassion was the greatest strength of all. Humanity's simple act of helping those in need had sparked a revolution that would reshape the stars themselves. The forgotten were forgotten no more. The end